The sheriff's truck idled at the curb, exhaust breathing white into the air. The engine kept running. The hat stayed in the man's hands. Caleb stood on the porch with numb fingers curled into his sleeves, watching vapor rise and vanish like something trying to escape. 16. Too thin for the cold. Too old to cry in front of strangers. Too young to know what to do next. Behind him, the front door was open just enough to leak heat and the smell of coffee that wasn't for him anymore. His uncle didn't shout, that he didn't swear. That was the worst part. An hour, Uncle Ray said, checking his watch. Not at Caleb. At the watch. Take what you can carry. The words came out flat, almost polite, like a checkout receipt, like a rule on a sign. No rage to fight, no emotion to blame, just a decision that had already hardened. Inside, the house ticked and clicked, pipes settling, a clock counting seconds that felt louder than the idling truck. Caleb could hear it even when he didn't want to. Tick, 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 like winter had its own heartbeat. Evan and Lily hovered at the bottom of the stairs. Evan was 9, hair sticking up, backpack with one strap hanging like a broken wing. Lily was 6, clutching her stuffed rabbit by one ear, eyes wide and dry. They weren't crying yet. Kids didn't cry when they still believed someone would fix it. Caleb knelt, pulled on Evan's boots, then Lily's. The leather was stiff from the cold. His fingers slipped. They didn't work right. He breathed into his hands and tried again. Shoes, he said. Coats, he added. He kept his voice steady, like a rope. Uncle Ray stood in the hallway with his coat already on, keys in pocket. His face looked tired in a way that didn't include kindness. He had the tiredness of someone who'd chosen the simplest path and didn't want to be questioned for it. There's not enough room, he said, as if the walls had whispered it to him. I've got my own problems. Caleb looked past him into the living room. The couch still had a dent where Mom used to sit with Lily on her lap. There was a faint, sweet smell in the fabric, laundry soap, and old perfume. The TV was off, reflecting Caleb's thin silhouette, like a stranger. His parents had been gone 3 weeks. The crash had been fast and stupid and random. Black ice on a bend. A guardrail that didn't hold. A phone call that split the world in half. The first night after the funeral, Caleb had stared at the ceiling and realized something cold. Grief didn't pay for heat. Grief didn't buy groceries. Grief didn't stop adults from calling you a situation. He'd heard the words through walls. Temporary. Custody. Foster. Paperwork. Got a judge in town. A social worker coming next week. Uncle Ray's voice had stayed calm the whole time, like he was reading the weather. I'm not doing this, Ray had said on day 2. I can't. Caleb had believed he was bluffing. People didn't throw kids out. Not really. Not in the cold. Not when their parents were still practically in the ground. But the sheriff's truck was here, and the truck was idling, and the door was open just enough for warmth to tease them. The sheriff stood by the steps, hat in hand, eyes on the yard like it was safer to look at Frost in a boy's face. His radio crackled with a warning about a storm rolling in from the west. Caleb caught pieces of it. Snow, wind, temperatures falling after sundown. A clock had started outside the house, too. Caleb moved fast through the rooms. Not running. Running made it feel like stealing. He opened drawers with quiet hands. Socks. Long underwear. A flashlight from the junk drawer. A lighter. A pack of crackers already stale. He found his father's old pocket knife in a bowl by the door. The knife was small, dull, and it felt like a hand held out from the past. He slipped it into his pocket without thinking. He didn't take photos off the wall. He didn't take blankets from the couch. Something in him refused to carry the house away like a defeated soldier. Evan stood in the hallway, watching Caleb's face like it was a map. Where are we going? Evan whispered. Caleb looked at Uncle Ray, looked at the sheriff, looked at the door that had already decided to close. We're going, Caleb said, and realized he didn't have the rest of the sentence. Lily tugged his sleeve. Do we come back after the storm? Her voice hit him in the ribs. He swallowed hard. He couldn't lie cleanly. Not to her. Not now. His throat tasted like metal. We'll find someplace dry. he said. That's the plan. Plan. A word that pretended he'd chosen any of this. Uncle Ray watched them step onto the porch. He didn't touch them. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't soften. The county will take them, the sheriff said quietly to Uncle Ray, like offering him an easier path. Uncle Ray's mouth tightened. Not my responsibility. No caricature. No villain laugh. Just cold arithmetic. Caleb felt something in his chest change shape. Not hatred. Hatred took energy. This was worse. This was a dull understanding that some adults only cared as far as they were legally required to. Caleb held Lily's hand. Evan walked close on his other side, backpack bouncing with each step. Snow began as dust, just a whisper against the railing. The wind lifted it, scattered it, laid it back down like a threat written in powder. Uncle Ray closed the door behind them. Not a slam, a careful click. That click sounded like a lock turning in Caleb's future. They walked past the mailbox, past the fence with the broken slat, past the tire tracks of the sheriff's truck that would soon pull away and pretend this never happened. The road was hard-packed and gray. The ditch lines were already white. Every breath burned. Caleb could feel the winter's teeth testing their coats. Evan's backpack strap cut into his shoulder. Lily stumbled twice, then found a rhythm, clutching her rabbit like it had bargained with the cold. They didn't go toward town. Town meant questions. Town meant people who would call someone. Town meant a social worker with a clipboard and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Caleb led them toward the woods. The trees stood bare and black, their branches scratching the sky. The wind sounded different as they entered, less open, more secret. Snow collected in the cracks of bark like sugar on burnt bread. Caleb knew these woods. He'd hunted mushrooms here with Dad. He'd built stupid forts with Evan. He'd once carried Lily on his shoulders along the creek and promised she'd never fall. Promises were heavy now. The storm clock kept ticking. The light thinned. The temperature fell another notch. Caleb stopped at a bend where the land rose toward the ridge. Above them, stone cut through the trees, dark and steep, a spine of rock overlooking a ravine. Wind moaned there, hollowed and low, like the ridge had a throat. Caleb's heart kicked hard. He didn't know why. Instinct. Memory. Something his father had said once, years ago, while pointing at that ridge. There's a place up there the wind can't find. Caleb hadn't cared then. He'd been a kid. Wind was just wind. Now Wind was a hunter. He stepped forward, pulling Evan and Lily with him, and the snow thickened. Tiny needles against his cheeks. The rock face grew closer, and then he saw it. Not clearly, not fully. A break in the stone where the snow didn't stick to a shadow where the wind bent around instead of through it at a dark mouth in the rock, half hidden by a curtain of hanging ice. Caleb stopped. The air near that shadow smelled different. Damp stone, old leaves, something mineral and deep, like the earth itself was breathing. Lily squeezed his hand. Caleb, what is that? He didn't answer, because if he named it, it might stop being real. He took one step closer and heard something inside. Not an animal, not a voice. A soft, steady sound like water moving under ice. And somewhere above the cave mouth, fresh scratch marks cut through the snow, like someone or something had been there recently. Caleb's stomach tightened. He turned to Evan and Lily, forcing his voice to stay calm. "Stay behind me," he whispered. Then he stepped toward the dark, toward the place the storm hadn't found yet. And the first true question of winter rose in him like smoke. Was this shelter or a trap? Caleb reaches a cave entrance and feels warm air brush his face from inside, warmth that shouldn't exist in winter. Caleb felt it again the moment he stepped closer. A breath of air, barely warm, slid out of the rock like a secret. Not enough to comfort, just enough to confuse. Winter didn't give warm air for free. He held his palm up near the cave mouth. The wind outside bit his knuckles raw, but the air inside was softer, damp with stone and something old. The smell reminded him of creek beds in spring, when ice broke and everything underneath smelled alive. Evan's boots crunched behind him. Is it safe? Lily pressed the rabbit to her chest like armor. Caleb didn't answer with words. He answered with his body, moving first, taking the risk first. He slid the small flashlight from the backpack, thumbed it on, and aimed the beam into the dark. The light cut a narrow tunnel through blackness. Stone walls glistened. The floor sloped down gently. Ice hung in long teeth from the ceiling, shimmering as the flashlight passed. Somewhere deeper, that soft sound continued. Water moving under something heavy. Caleb took one step inside. The cold changed immediately. Not warm, not cozy, but different. Less wind, less bite, like the cave took the sharp edge off the world. Evan followed, shoulders hunched. Lily hesitated at the threshold. Caleb turned back and held out his hand. Come on, just stay close. Lily stepped in, and the outside wind slammed snow against the rock behind them. The cave swallowed the sound, muting it, like a door closing without fully closing. For a second, Caleb felt relief. Then he saw the scratches again. Not on the snow this time, on the stone. Long marks, shallow but fresh, running diagonally across the wall near the entrance. The kind of marks Dad had once pointed out on trees when they'd found bear sign. Caleb's mouth went dry. He kept the flashlight steady, pretending he hadn't noticed. Don't touch the walls, he said, like that was the biggest danger. They moved deeper. The cave widened after a bend, opening into a chamber that made Caleb stop, without meaning to. His breath came out in a slow stream, and he realized he'd been holding it. The ceiling rose high above them, lost in darkness. The walls were slick with moisture. The floor was uneven stone, with patches of ice that looked like glass poured over rock. And in the center, half lit by the flashlight, was a lake. A small one, round and still, frozen solid, the surface pale and cloudy. Trapped bubbles scattered beneath like tiny ghosts caught mid-breath. The ice reflected the flashlight beam in dull flashes, like a blind eye watching. Evan stared. There's a lake inside? Lily whispered. It's like a monster's mirror. Caleb walked to the edge slowly. His boots scraped frost. He crouched and pressed his fingers to the ice. Cold seeped up through his skin. But beneath that, under the ice, the sound of moving water was real, soft, slow, patient. Somewhere it flowed. He swallowed. It's frozen. That's good. Evan frowned. How is that good? Caleb stood. Because frozen means we can cross it. And it means it's not flooding. He didn't say the other thought. Frozen means we might be able to take food from it. His stomach twisted at the idea. Fishing had been Dad's thing, not his. But hunger didn't care about grief. They circled the chamber, staying close to the walls. The flashlight found something that made Caleb's pulse jump. A small pile of old firewood. Not a lot, not fresh, but stacked. Deliberate. Evan saw it too. Someone's been here. Caleb's eyes moved fast. He scanned the ground. There were no footprints. At least none that were obvious. But the stone was wet in places, and the air carried faint smoke. So faint it could have been imagination. Lily's voice dropped. What if someone comes back? Caleb forced calm into his tone. Then we talk. We're not doing anything wrong. He said it like he believed it. But the cave didn't feel abandoned. It felt unused. Like a room someone hadn't entered in a long time, but still owned. Caleb found a narrow shelf of stone along the wall where the ground was drier. He set the backpack down and started pulling items out with quick, purposeful movements. Socks, crackers, flashlight, lighter, the lighter. He stared at it like it was an enemy. His fingers were stiff. The wheel was cold. He flicked it once, nothing. Twice, sparks that died instantly. On the third try, a small flame appeared, trembling like it didn't want to exist. Caleb cupped his hands around it and felt a tiny lick of warmth. Lily leaned in, eyes wide. It's pretty. It's fragile, Caleb said, and it came out harsher than he meant. because it was. Everything was. He needed tinder. He needed something that would catch. He dug to the backpack, found an old receipt, then a napkin from a fast food place. Evan had stuffed it in his pocket weeks ago and forgotten. Caleb tore it into strips. The firewood pile had pieces small enough to start and thicker ones for later. Whoever had left it knew what they were doing. Caleb didn't think about that too much. Thinking about it made his skin itch. He built a small fire ring with stones near the wall, away from the ice. The floor there was damp, but it would do. He laid the paper strips down, then thin twigs, then a few small sticks. He flicked the lighter again. Flame. Paper curled. Smoke rose. The smoke smelled like burned sugar and old trees. It filled the chamber slowly, hugging the ceiling. The fire caught. A small orange tongue, then a steady little mouth, eating the sticks. The crackle was soft but loud in the cave, like the first sound of hope in a place that had only known winter. Evan's shoulders dropped a fraction. Lily's face loosened, as if her body had been holding itself tight all day and finally remembered how to breathe. Caleb stared at the fire until his eyes watered. The worst part of winter wasn't the cold. It was the way the cold made you count everything. He counted the sticks, counted the crackers, counted their breaths. They ate the crackers slowly, each bite loud in the quiet. The salt tasted sharp, almost painful on Caleb's tongue. Hunger made flavors violent. Evan broke his cracker into tiny pieces and fed one to Lily first. Caleb noticed and felt something twist in his chest. Pride and fear tangled. Lily chewed and whispered, "Are we?" "Camping." Evan looked at Caleb, like, "Please say yes." Caleb stared at the fire. "Yeah," he said, "camping." It was a lie shaped like comfort. Night came early, as if the storm pulled darkness down. Outside, the wind howled around the rock face. Snow hissed against stone. The cave muted it, but you could still hear the storm's body moving, shifting, circling like it wanted in. Caleb piled more wood on the fire. The flame grew, throwing light across the chamber. Shadows moved on the walls, tall, warped shapes that didn't match their bodies. Lily crawled into Caleb's coat, where he sat with his back against the rock. Evan leaned on the backpack, eyes half closed but never fully shutting. Caleb tried to stay awake. His mind wouldn't stop showing him images. Mom's hands on the steering wheel, Dad's laugh, the phone ringing, the funeral home smell, flowers and chemicals, and cold air. Then Uncle Ray's watch, Uncle Ray's voice, an hour. Caleb's jaw tightened until it hurt. Evan murmured, "Do you think he'll come get us tomorrow?" Caleb didn't answer quickly. He didn't want Evan to hear the truth in the silence. "I don't know," Caleb said, and forced himself to add, "but we're okay tonight." Evan nodded, though his eyes looked older in the firelight. The fire popped. A spark jumped, then died. Caleb's eyelids drooped. His body begged for sleep, but fear kept prodding him, sharp and constant. He listened. Water under ice, wind outside, fire breathing. Then another sound, a scrape, not from the fire, not from the wind, from the cave entrance. Caleb sat up so fast Lily startled awake. He grabbed the flashlight with one hand, the pocket knife with the other. Evan's eyes snapped open. "What is it?" Caleb didn't speak. He aimed the flashlight toward the tunnel. The beam cut through darkness and landed on the stone slope, leading back to the mouth of the cave. For a second, there was nothing. Then something moved at the edge of the light, low and slow. A shape, half hidden behind a jet of rock. Caleb's heartbeat slammed against his ribs. He couldn't tell if it was animal or a person, but he could tell one thing. It was watching the fire, and it wasn't afraid of them. Sometimes the dark doesn't hide monsters. Sometimes it hides witnesses. Caleb tightened his grip on the knife. "Evan," he whispered, voice thin, "take Lily. Get behind me." Evan pulled Lily close. Her rabbit falling to the stone with a soft thud. The shape at the tunnel edge shifted again. Caleb held the flashlight steady, fighting the shake in his hand. And then, quiet as snow landing on a grave, the shape stepped forward into the beam. The light reveals not a bear, but a man in a soaked hunting jacket, staring at them with exhausted eyes. like he didn't expect to find children here. The man raised both hands slowly. "Easy," he said. His voice echoed strangely, stretched thin by stone and distance. "Didn't mean to scare you." Caleb didn't lower the knife. The man looked older than Caleb's father had been. Mid-40s, maybe, beard crusted with ice, eyes red from wind and cold. A rifle hung loose on a strap across his chest, pointed at the ground like it had forgotten its purpose. He took one careful step back, letting the flashlight stay on him. "I saw the smoke," the man said. "Didn't think it was kids." Evan swallowed. Lily pressed her face into Evan's coat. Caleb's voice came out hoarse. "This is ours tonight." The man nodded quick. "I'm not here to take it." He hesitated, then added, "Name's Mark. I hunt up here sometimes. Haven't been back in weeks." Caleb didn't respond. Mark's eyes moved. Fire, lake backpack, 3 pairs of boots by the wall. He took it all in the way adults did when they knew more than they wanted to. "You alone?" Mark asked, already knowing the answer. Caleb shook his head once. "We're staying." Mark exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding something heavy. He glanced back toward the entrance, where wind hissed through the tunnel. "Storm's bad," he said. "Gets worse after midnight." He reached into his pocket, pulled out something small, and set it on the stone near the entrance, far from the fire. A wrapped stick of jerky, salt-stained. "Hard. Take it," Mark said. "I've got more down the ridge." Caleb stared at it. Food was dangerous. Food meant debt. Food meant adults thinking they could decide things. Mark seemed to read his face. "No strings," he said quietly. "Just don't let the fire die." Then he backed away, step by step, until the darkness swallowed him. The scrape came again, boots on stone, then nothing but wind. Evan waited until the cave was silent before whispering, "Caleb, are we in trouble?" Caleb knelt, picked up the jerky, and broke it cleanly into 3 pieces. "No," he said. "We're learning." They ate slowly. The jerky was tough, salty, alive with flavor. It burned going down. Lily chewed forever, eyes closed like she was afraid it would disappear as she rushed. That night, Caleb slept in pieces. He woke to every sound. The fire shrinking, the lake shifting under ice, the storm clawing at the entrance. By morning, the world outside the cave was erased. Snow had sealed the entrance halfway up, packed hard by wind. The light filtering and was dim and blue, like underwater. Caleb's stomach growled, so loud it startled Lily awake. That was the moment hunger stopped being an idea. The crackers were gone. The jerky was gone. The cold was patient. Caleb stared at the frozen lake. Fishing through ice wasn't something you decided. It was something you survived or didn't. He tested the ice with stone. Solid. Thick. "Evan," he said, "I need you to stay close to Lily. I'm going to try something." Evan nodded too fast. Caleb used a pocket knife to chip at the ice near the edge. The sound rang sharp in the cave, like metal on bone. His hands burned, then went numb. He worked anyway. Hunger teaches fast and fear. The hole took an hour. Maybe more. Time didn't behave right in the cave. When water finally showed through, dark and moving, Caleb felt dizzy with relief. He stripped a wire from the flashlight strap, bent it into a crude hook, tied it to a shoelace. No bait. He lowered it anyway. Minutes passed. His arms shook. Evan counted breaths out loud to stay calm. Lily hummed to her rabbit. Then a tug. Small, almost imaginary. Caleb held still. Another tug. Stronger. He pulled. A flash of silver broke the surface, flapping wildly, scattering icy water across his hands. Evan shouted. Lily gasped. Caleb slipped, nearly fell, but caught himself and hauled the fish onto the stone. It was small, skinny, real. Caleb laughed once, a sharp, broken sound that surprised all of them. They cooked it over the fire, skin crackling, flesh pale and steaming. The smell filled the cave, rich and unbelievable. They shared it carefully, each bite measured. It wasn't enough, but it was everything. That night, Caleb wrote a rule in his head. 1 fish means tomorrow exists. As the fire burned low, he noticed something new near the wall. half buried under old leaves and stone. A rusted saw, not sharp, not pretty, but real. Caleb picked it up, felt its weight, and smiled for the first time since the porch. As Caleb turns the saw in his hands, he realizes the cave wasn't just shelter. It had been prepared before, and whoever prepared it knew winter well. Days stopped having names. They became measurements. 2 fish days and no fish days. Wind days. Quiet days that felt louder than storms. Caleb learned the cave the way you learned a person, by noticing what changed when you weren't looking. The lake cracked differently at night, sharp pops like knuckles snapping. In the morning it sighed, slow and tired. Water beneath ice never slept. It waited. They moved their sleeping spot farther from the entrance, and closer to the back wall, with a stone curved inward like a rib cage. The air there was steadier, less draft. Caleb stacked rocks into a low barrier to block the worst of the wind. Shelter isn't walls. It's what you teach the cold to ignore. The saw became their first upgrade. Caleb tested it on fallen branches near the cave mouth during calmer hours. The blade protested, but it cut slowly. He brought back short lengths of wood, each one feeling like a trophy. Evan learned how to split kindling by wedging the knife and striking it with a stone. Lily collected dry moss and tucked it into a little pile like she was feeding an invisible animal. They built a platform from flat stones and with scraps so they wouldn't sleep directly on ice. It was crooked and uneven, but it lifted them just enough to make a difference. Caleb started marking the days by the lake level and the fish. He learned patterns. Fish moved near dawn and near dark. Too much noise scared them. Too little patience starved you. Some days he caught nothing. Those were the hardest. On no-fish days, hunger crawled under his skin and stayed there. His hands shook when he tried to cut wood. His thoughts slowed, then raced. Evan grew quieter on those days. Lily asked fewer questions. Losses stacked quietly. Then came micro-victories. A second hook, bent from a nail-found wedge between stones at a piece of salt in Mark's dropped pack, discovered after snow melted near the entrance of the tarp. Old, torn, but usable, found rolled behind a rock shelf like someone had meant to come back for it. Each thing shifted the balance just a little. Caleb used a tarp to section off a corner of the cave, creating a smaller pocket that trapped heat. Smoke thickened there, but warmth did too. He learned how to feed the fire slow, so it didn't eat everything at once. Evan learned knots. Bad ones at first, then better. Lily learned to listen. She could tell when the lake ice was stressed by the sound alone. She'd stop humming and say, "It's loud today," and Caleb would know not to drill. They talked about their parents in pieces. Not the crash. Never the crash. Mom's pancakes that were always burnt on one side. The dad's stupid jokes that made no sense. The way he said the cave was a place the wind can't find. Caleb didn't cry when they talked. He cried later, alone, staring at the fire until the world blurred. Grief didn't leave. It learned to sit quietly. Weeks passed. Mark came back once, then twice, always careful, always at a distance. He brought news with him, unasked. Towns buzzing. He said one evening, tossing a coil of rope onto the stone. People asking questions. Sheriffs asking louder. Caleb's chest tightened. About us. Mark nodded. About 3 kids who vanished into the woods. Evan stiffened. Lily clutched her rabbit. "They'll separate you," Mark added. Not cruelly. Just honestly. Different homes. Easier that way. Caleb felt the cave close and around him. "No," he said. The word came out flat and dangerous. "We stay together." Mark studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "Then you stay quiet." Winter deepened. Snow buried the ridge. Ice thickened. The entrance narrowed. One night, the wind changed. It didn't howl. It pressed. The cave shuddered. Fine dust drifted from the ceiling. A low groan rolled through the stone like the mountain shifting in its sleep. Caleb woke with his heart already running. He smelled something wrong. Not smoke. Wet stone. Then a crack. Sharp. Close. A rock fell from the ceiling and shattered near the fire, sending sparks skittering. Evan shouted. Lily screamed. Caleb grabbed them both and pulled them back as another crack echoed, deeper this time, heavier. The entrance boomed as something collapsed outside, stone slamming into stone. Snow and rock poured down the tunnel. The light vanished. The air changed. Caleb held them tight as the cave roared, alive and angry, sealing itself shut, and the fire flickered hard, starved of oxygen. The entrance collapses completely, burying the cave in darkness, and the fire begins to die. The dark was immediate, not the soft dark of night, the heavy dark that pressed against your eyes. Caleb felt it like hands on his chest. The fire shrank to a thin, desperate glow, the smoke changing, thick and wrong. The air tasted dusty, sharp with stone and panic. Evan coughed. Lily sobbed once, high and small, then went silent. Caleb forced himself to breathe slowly. Fast breaths meant less air for all of them. "Stay still," he said. His voice sounded too loud, too close. "We're okay. We're okay." He didn't know if it was true. He crawled toward the entrance on hands and knees, fingers scraping over fresh rubble. Stone, packed snow, something solid and immovable pressed back at him. Sealed. Completely. Caleb's pulse hammered in his ears. He tried the pocket knife, wedging into gaps, prying at smaller rocks. They shifted, then settled harder, like the cave had decided to keep them. The fire guttered. Evan's voice shook. "Caleb, it's cold." Caleb crawled back, scooped Lily into his lap, wrapped his coat around all three of them. He could feel Evan's ribs through his jacket. Lily's breathing came in short bursts. Panic burns more oxygen than fire ever could. Caleb closed his eyes and counted. 1 breath, point 2.3. He pictured the cave as it was before. The slope, the angles, the shelf near the back wall. Air moved there. He'd felt it before. A draft that didn't belong to the entrance. He crawled toward the back, feeling along the stone with numb hands. His fingers found a narrow crack where the wall met the floor. Cold air brushed his skin. Hope hit him so hard it hurt. "Evan," he whispered, "help me clear here." They worked in silence, pushing away small stones, widening the gap. It wasn't an exit. It didn't need to be. It was breathing. Fresh air slid in, thin but steady. The fire steadied, catching again. They sat there for hours, huddled, listening to the mountain settle. Dust coated their hair. Their throats burned, but the cave held. When dawn came, it didn't bring light, just quiet. Caleb slept sitting up, head against stone, dreaming of being buried and waking buried again. They spent the next 2 days clearing the entrance enough to let in a blade of light, not enough to leave, enough to remind them the world still existed. Caleb's hands cracked open. Blood spotted the stone. He wrapped them in torn cloth and kept working. The cave smelled different now, staler, heavier. Then Lily stopped eating. At first it was subtle, a missed bite, a turned head. Then came the shivering that didn't stop near the fire. Her skin burned under Caleb's hand, too warm, wrong. Evan's voice dropped. "She's hot." Caleb's stomach sank. Cold you can fight. Fever fights back. Lily whimpered in her sleep, calling for Mom. Caleb held her and felt useless. Mark didn't come. The storm had cut the ridge off completely. Caleb melted snow, fed Lily tiny sips. He used the last of the salt. He whispered stories he barely remembered. Her breathing grew shallow. The cave felt smaller. Caleb sat awake through the night, staring at the dark, bargaining with anything that might listen. When Lily's breathing hitched, Caleb panicked, real panic, the kind that tears at your throat. Then faintly, footsteps, voices, echoing through the blocked entrance. Mark's voice urgent. "They're in here. I know it." Metal scraped stone. Light punched through the rubble. Cold air rushing like a wave. Caleb cried without sound. His hands reached through, pulling rocks away, widening the gap. Mark's face appeared, grim and focused. He took one look at Lily and swore softly. "We're late," he said, "but not too late." Lily's fever spikes as Mark insists they must leave the cave immediately, or she won't survive the night. Mark didn't wait for permission. He slid into the cave on his knees, shrugging off his pack, hands already moving, checking Lily's forehead, her neck, the inside of her wrist. His face tightened, not with panic, but with calculation. "She's burning," he said. "How long?" Caleb swallowed. "A day. Maybe 2. Mark closed his eyes for half a second. When he opened them, the decision was already made. "She needs help," he said. "Real help." Evan's voice cracked. "Like the hospital?" The word hit the cave walls and came back heavier. Hospital meant names. Names meant papers. Papers meant separation. Caleb shook his head hard. "They'll take her. They'll take all of us." Mark met his eyes. "If she stays, she might die." Silence stretched thin and sharp. Lily whimpered, rolling her head weakly against Caleb's chest. Her lips were dry. Her breathing came in shallow pulls, like she was tired of the work. Caleb felt something break loose inside him. Not loudly, not cleanly, just a quiet collapse of the last illusion that he could muscle his way through everything. Loving someone doesn't make you strong. Sometimes it just makes the choices hurt more. "What do we do?" Evan whispered. Mark hesitated. Then he did something unexpected. He sat down, right there on the stone. Same level. No authority. No rushing. "There are people," he said carefully, "who won't split you up, not if they understand what you've been doing." Caleb laughed once, bitter and hollow. "They won't care." "They might," Mark said, "if they see you." Caleb looked at his hands. Cracked, bleeding. Hands that had pulled fish from ice and rocks from ceilings. Hands that had failed Lily anyway. The cave, once protection, now felt like a lie. They moved Lily on a makeshift sled, tarp wrapped around with slats, rope knotted tight. Evan helped, silent and fierce, his face set in a way Caleb had never seen before. The entrance was wider now, hacked open by Mark and 2 other men. Hunters. The same kind of men Dad used to wave at on trails. The same kind who looked past kids in town like they were scenery. Now they stared, not accusing, not kind, just seeing. One of them muttered, "Jesus." Another took off his hat. The cold outside was brutal. It slapped Caleb awake, burned his lungs. Snow stretched white and endless. The storm's aftermath brutal and clean. They moved fast. Down the ridge, over drifts. Lily's breath puffed weak clouds into the air. Caleb walked beside her the whole way, one hand gripping the tarp, the other brushing her hair back again and again like it might anchor her here. At the trailhead, a truck waited, engine running. Not the sheriff's. A woman stood there, wrapped in a heavy coat, eyes sharp and wet at the same time. Late 30s, hair pulled back, a medic's bag slung over her shoulder. She didn't ask questions first. She knelt and checked Lily's pulse, her breathing, her pupils. "Pneumonia," she said quietly. "Or close to it." Caleb's throat closed. "Is she—" "She's sick," the woman said, "but she's alive." Caleb's knees nearly gave out. They drove, not to the hospital, to a house at the edge of town. Warm, overheated, smelling of soup and antiseptic, and something baked recently. The woman, Sarah, worked fast. Steam, towels, medicine that tasted awful but worked. Lily coughed and cried and then slept deep and heavy, her fever finally breaking near dawn. Caleb sat on the kitchen floor all night. No one told him to move. In the morning, the sheriff came, then a social worker. Caleb braced for the end. Instead, the hunters spoke. Mark spoke. Sarah spoke. They didn't soften the story. They didn't exaggerate it either. They said what they'd seen, what the cave looked like, what the kids had built, what Winter had done, and what these 3 had done back. The social worker looked at Caleb differently after that. Not as a problem, as a fact. Still, rules were rules. Temporary placements were discussed. Caleb heard the words separate again. His jaw tightened. Then Uncle Ray showed up. Clean coat, nervous hands, eyes darting. "I made a mistake," he said quickly. "I can take them now. I just needed time." Caleb felt heat rise up his spine. "You had time," he said quietly. "You had an hour." The room went still. Uncle Ray's face flushed, not with shame, but with being seen. The social worker folded her hands. We'll talk about options. Caleb looked at Evan, at Lily sleeping on the couch, color finally back in her cheeks. He knew this wasn't over. Winter never ended cleanly. The social worker announces that spring placements are coming, and unless something changes, the siblings will be separated by the end of the month. Spring arrived like an accusation. The snow didn't disappear all at once. IT retreated, slowly, reluctantly, like it wanted credit for leaving. Mud replaced ice. Water ran loud again. The world stretched its joints and pretended nothing had happened. For Caleb, spring felt worse than winter. Winter had been honest. Spring smiled while taking things away. Lily recovered fast. Kids always did when given half a chance. She laughed again, asked for pancakes, drew pictures of caves with smiling suns above them. Evan grew taller in a way that startled Caleb. His shoulders squared. His voice dropped a fraction. He stopped asking questions that had no answers. Caleb slept indoors now, ate regular meals, showered until the water ran cold. And still, he woke with his fists clenched. The social worker visited every week. Clipboards, polite smiles, phrases like best interest and long-term stability. Each visit ended the same way. "Caleb, you've done something remarkable," she said gently, "but you're still a minor," which was another way of saying, you don't get to decide. The plan took shape without asking him. Evan would go to a foster family north of town. Lily would stay closer, temporarily, with a couple who already had 2 kids. Caleb would be placed elsewhere, maybe farther. Together was no longer the default. Together was a problem to solve. Sometimes survival isn't enough to earn the right to stay. Uncle Ray called 3 times. Caleb didn't answer. Then Ray showed up at the house. He looked smaller indoors, less certain, like a man whose story had started slipping away from him. "I can fix this," Ray said, standing by the door, hands open. "People are talking. It looks bad." Caleb stared at him. It was bad. Ray flinched. "I was overwhelmed." Caleb nodded. "So was I." Silence pressed in. Ray stepped closer. "If they come with me, it all goes away. The questions, the drama." Caleb felt his pulse slow. "You don't want us," he said. "Not angry. Not loud. You want it quiet." Ray's jaw tightened. "I'm their family." Caleb's voice dropped. "Family doesn't watch the clock." The words landed harder than shouting ever could. Ray left without another word. That night, Caleb walked alone. He followed the creek up the ridge. Mud sucked at his boots. The air smelled like wet earth and rot and beginnings. The cave waited where it always had. The entrance was open now, the collapse clear by thaw and gravity. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling. Inside, the lake was breaking. Cracks spidered across the ice. Dark water pulsed beneath, impatient. Caleb stood where the fire had been. The stones were still blackened. This place had kept them alive, and it had almost taken them too. He understood something then. The cave wasn't home. It was proof that he could endure, proof that they could adapt. But endurance wasn't a future. When Caleb turned back toward town, the decision had already formed. He would fight, not with fists, with witnesses. The hearing was small, quiet, boring on paper, but the room was full. Mark sat in the back, Sarah beside him, 2 hunters, a teacher, the woman who ran the corner store. They didn't exaggerate. They told what they'd seen. A boy cutting ice with bleeding hands, a child counting breaths to stay calm, a little girl who knew the sound of stressed ice. Caleb spoke last. He didn't beg. He said one sentence. "They don't survive without each other." Silence followed. The social worker looked down at her notes. Then she closed the folder. "There is," she said slowly, "another option. A couple outside town. No kids of their own. Foster trained. Insisted on keeping siblings together. They'd been waiting. Hope didn't explode. It crept in. Quiet, careful, just like spring. Caleb meets the couple and realizes hope still comes with conditions he doesn't control. The house sat at the edge of a dirt road, half hidden by trees that hadn't decided whether they were done with winter yet. Not big, not small. Lived in. Paint chipped near the porch. Wind chimes tangled and quiet. A dog bowled by the door. Caleb noticed everything. The couple waited outside, like they didn't want to trap anyone indoors. Mara was tall, gray starting at her temples, eyes steady. Jonah had rough hands and a careful smile, like someone who knew when to step back. They didn't crouch to Lily's level. They didn't speak too loudly. They just said hello. "We have rules," Mara said early, "and space, and a lot to learn." Jonah added, "And we don't split siblings." Caleb's chest tightened. "Ever?" Evan asked. Mara met his eyes. "Not unless someone asks us to." No one promised forever. That mattered. The first night, Caleb slept on top of the blankets. Habit. The second night, he slept under them but woke at every sound. The third night, he slept through dawn and woke panicked, heart racing, sure something was wrong. Nothing was. That was the hardest part. School started again. People stared, whispered. The cave story spread without permission. Kids asked questions like it was a movie. Were you scared? Did you kill anything? Did you live in there like for real? Caleb learned to answer with shrugs. Evan punched a kid once. Lily cried in the bathroom the first week. Scars didn't fade just because winter ended, but they softened. Mara taught Evan how to fix a fence. Jonah showed Caleb how to use a real saw, sharp and clean. Lily slept without the rabbit some nights now. Uncle Ray never came back. Caleb didn't miss him. In late spring, Caleb went back to the ridge. Alone, the hike felt shorter now. The air lighter. The creek loud and careless. The cave waited. Sunlight reached farther inside. The lake was gone, just wet stone and a slow trickle running free. Caleb stood where the fire had been. He could still smell smoke if he tried. He knelt and placed a pocket knife on the stone. The blade was nicked, worn. Enough. Some places save you once. You don't ask them to do it twice. He left the knife there. A thank you to goodbye. When he stepped back into the light, the wind touched his face, gentle this time. Not hunting, just passing. Caleb walked down the ridge toward a future that wasn't clean or guaranteed, but real. Behind him, the cave stayed quiet. It had done its job. If you made it this far, thank you for staying with this story. Tell us in the comments where you're listening from, your country, your city, or wherever this story found you today. And if this journey stayed with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.